Before we start the video, I want to read what Megumi wrote. Um, I'm so glad you mentioned about these employers giving you that false sense of security to make you feel at ease as you're learning the job. This also happened to me a month ago while I was on a trial shift for a job. I was told to take my time and be less tense of doing this cleaning task. But a couple days later, I get a call from my agency saying they decided not to hire me because apparently I seemed like I didn't know what I was doing and didn't get the task done quickly enough. I also would absolutely refrain from taking on a job that required me to buy a uniform to work there if they reserve the right to get rid of me before I get the first paycheck. That's literally a scam. I am hard pressed to believe employers can even legally do this. Even if you're desperate, there are times these demanding hours for these jobs go beyond the point of absurdity, along with your pay being commission based. You're always going to be on edge. And dude, highly relatable. You saying about these employers buttering you up on the first week when you work at their place, but the moment you reach week 2 or 3, if your performance isn't up to their standard, they'll throw you away regardless of the amount of training they gave you. It's asinine. Very good video. Just to go over some of the things he wrote, I am someone who's worked probably 7, 8, 9 different jobs. And in working all these different jobs, I have what I've said before is like a pattern of noticing parallels where things start to kind of line up. Case in point, the first job I had was with a restaurant, and I only worked there for 1 week. They gave me 3 hour shifts throughout the week, and it didn't bother me that much back then because I was still in school. But the reason I stopped working there is because towards the end of the week, I was confronted by one of the managers about my shoes, which were not slip resistant. Now, when I was hired by them, they told me I just needed to have black shoes. And then only after becoming an employee that they, and working there for several days, did they throw this curveball at me. Oh, you need non-slip resistant shoes. And then they wanted me to buy it through their company's brochure. So I would need to pay out money to them to get the shoes. Again, this is at a time where I was getting paid $10 an hour, and I'd only worked for 3 hours for 3 days. So it was like 80 something, $90, tax, whatever, but roughly somewhere in the 80s, right? Higher 80s. So they wanted me to go and buy shoes that on average in their little booklet were roughly anywhere from 40 to 50 or $60. So that means that I would have possibly worked, if I went through with buying these shoes, 3 days for $10 a day. And I just said, you know what, this is stupid, and I left out of there. So that's kind of what this reminded me of even more, except it's more absurd because of just how many hours you have, right? Of Monday through Saturday, 9 to 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. That was the one deviation, but it's that same core theme of you working there for a few days, being hired, like as you are, and then them trying to get you to pay out some amount of money that eats up either either half or most of your money that you made that week. And just to read one more part of this, where he says, even if you're desperate, there are times these demanding hours for these jobs go beyond the point of absurdity, along with your pay being commission based. Well, what I was saying is that you can be desperate and still feel like this is not something you can do. Like, I would not be happy to be working a job 6 days a week, showing up on time, learning all the stuff, and just have them basically say, kick rocks, because I'm not selling the amount of things that they want. And also, just to, I know I'm kind of like jumping around here, the part where he mentions when you reach, you're always going to be on edge, and dude, highly relatable, you saying about these employers butting you up in the first week when you work at their place, but the moment you reach week 2 or 3, if your performance isn't up to their standard, they'll throw you away. Yeah, that's what happened to me at the retailer, where the first week, everybody was going, oh, you're learning, and good job, and you picked this up so quickly, wait. But once week 2 and 3 started rolling around, you need to make sure that you do this and you click that, and we just got a complaint from a customer who said so. It's kid gloves during those first couple of days of like luring you in, trying to like, again, give you that false sense of security, and then after those first couple of days are up, they put the knife in you. But yeah, I really didn't have any issue with his comment. I just wanted to go over it a little bit and also say that my issue once again is not places having a dress code. but rather the amount of investment they expect for you to give a company that reserves the right to get rid of you anytime they want. So when I was working at this place, this is going to tie back into the central point of the video. I started noticing some things that were kind of interesting. I went out in the field Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And during these 4 days, I was with 3 different managers at that place. Each one of them had their nice little suit and tie on. And while we would sit there together, just kind of, conversing about whatever, because for a lot of times during the day, it is dead air, like just nobody walks past you. Just moments where there's really nothing to do but stand around and look around. But when I was with the first guy, who I ended up liking the most out of any of them, he was talking about, various shows and movies, and at various points he cursed, and, that was no big deal to me. But then when I was with the second person this past Thursday, this girl, she had one of those, I don't know what the name of the device is. I guess I'm just too primitive to know, but she had this device that could play music on it. It's like a MP3 player. You hook it up to your phone and it plays songs in there. And this is something that she puts on, obviously, to help her pass the time. But the songs that she was playing were very profanity laced. A lot of swearing, a lot of descriptions of explicit acts. And when I was with the last guy on a Friday, when he and I were driving around, we were actually supposed to be together again yesterday until I quit that morning, like after getting up there, just from having that talk with the overall leader manager guy, the supreme overlord of the company. But when I was driving with this manager on Friday, he was cursing. He was talking about how stupid as blank the people that were driving past us were. And I guess what I'm saying here is that dress codes, they're supposed to be indicative of etiquette and some level of properness. But, and this is why I say we live in a rotten society, appearance should never trump substance. So like the employees can show up in their suits and their ties and their Oxford shoes and their dresses and their pumps, but if they're sitting over here cursing like sailors and listening to, in front of a trainee, by the way, someone who's not even like fully integrated into the company, profanity laced music and singing the lyrics of it as well. When I see that kind of stuff, I'm not really convinced that this is an operation which is following proper procedures, I should say. It's kind of like if I, just as an example, were to say that, we need to make sure that when people come into our restaurant, they are greeted with handshakes and smiles. And then as people are going up to order stuff, we're like, oh, we're out of this, we're out of that. It's like, yeah, it's, again, I know that etiquette and decorum are cool, right? They're nice little like concepts and ideas, but the substance of do we have the materials to sell to people, and us not having them should be the most important thing of the day. That should be the number one thing that we try to address. And this is where I say, what good is having a dress code, to give off the appearance of professionalism if the people wearing this stuff are still not acting professional in spite of having it on. Now, the other part of this goes to the fact that in the training program, they have a process of someone being able to actually sell things. Like, you don't just sign up, get hired, and then, after like the day after orientation, you can now just start selling things. You have to go through this procedure, like in terms of just background check, just little paperwork stuff that usually takes a couple of days. Now, roughly 2 or 3 days ago, I received an email from this company about some website. When I saw it, I didn't really think much of it because no one there said anything to me about it. They didn't say, hey, you're going to be receiving this. I've had so many places I've worked for that send me promotional type of stuff that I don't even read, and just, it's whatever. I didn't think much of it. And I figured if it's such a big deal, like other jobs I've had, they will say, hey, you need to complete this when you're going to get an email about this. You need to do, they would give me some kind of guidance on what I should do when receiving this thing that they would tell me would come in email. So yesterday when I came up there, the manager that I was with on Friday says that one of the guys he's got under him is now able to sell things, that he thinks it's me. And the lead manager, the one that, sat there and chewed me out over people being able to see my chest hair and me having facial hair, he is talking to him, and he's like, hey, is Justin able to sell things? He's like, did you complete this program? Did you sign this up? And I when he's basically like very quickly and almost aggressively like hurling out different things that I was supposed to do to be able to sell stuff. Like, once you complete these different online forms, you'll be qualified and then able to do that. But the issue I have with this is, again, no one told me what this was. Like, I received emails, was given no instruction on, hey, you need to complete this by this day or complete this today. So it basically was, you're going to come up here most days of the week, 6 days a week, all day, almost every day, all day. And regardless of all the stuff we're saying about you learning and improving, we're going to send you homework, stuff to do like on your own time, and then chew you out for not doing it, even though you had no idea you were supposed to do it because we didn't say anything to. It's like, when you hear that, doesn't that sound unprofessional? Doesn't that sound like a place that's not really, like, again, the people dress nice, right? Again, the Oxford shoes, the sweaters and the ties and the long sleeve shirts and the skirts and the dresses and the pumps. But like I said, when you hear that, for as professional looking as they are, they're not professional enough to tell their employee, hey, you need to complete this form that's going to come in your email. Doesn't it seem like something's kind of out of whack? Now, the other part of this that I wanted to talk about is that I'm not, again, trying to say companies should not have dress codes at all. I said before, most jobs I've had, it's a shirt that they give you for free, at least 2 pairs of it, and then the only other thing is maybe if you're working at some restaurant, they want you to have slip-resistant shoes. The issue here, again, is that they wanted me to buy suits, which are a shirt, a pair of pants, the dress shoes, the little coat thing, and this is going to be on at a minimum at least $200+ Like, it's gonna be at least a fifth of a grand before you've even been paid for working there. And I just thought that was ridiculous. But also, let's get to the practical side of formality, because it's like, I know Jem makes his jokes about, you have a coat. I don't wear my coat all day long. A lot of people who watch me don't live in California. We have days where it is 70, 80. I've even seen 90 degrees. The weather can get really hot. And when I was talking to the manager I went with on Friday, and I know that term is going to get redundant here, I said, wait, you guys want us to wear long sleeve shirts while it's 80 and 90 degrees? And he was like, oh, you can just roll the sleeves up and you can take your coat off. And like, I guess those are solutions, but an even better one would just be let somebody wear a short sleeve dress shirt. But I guess that makes too much sense. But again, what I'm getting at here is, with the weather conditions, like, for example, they will let their employees, when they're out in the field, put on sneakers, right, with their suits. And that's clearly them acknowledging that it's not practical for someone to just have on this damn, Oxford shoe all day long, right? You're not going to see some woman who's trying to sell stuff running around in 5-inch pumps when she can just throw on some sneakers and chase people that way. So there's what I'm getting at is, there's an acknowledgement by them that some of the stuff they want you to wear is not practical to just have on all day long, but then they still expect you to have on things which are not friendly with the weather conditions of where you are. So, like, even though it's 80, 90 degrees outside, you still have to wear your long sleeve shirt with your suit top over it. And, you have to make sure that you're covered from head to toe. I mean, it's nuts. It's insane. But yeah, my problem with them is that the dress code is whatever, other than, just being ridiculously expensive for a job that is not invested in you, but wants you to get invested in it. But also, if you're going to have a dress code, if you're going to try to like look so professional and, above it all, and like as a place of business, why don't they function better? Why do they allow their employees to go around the office swearing like sailors, acting like hyenas, screaming? this is, and of course the whole like disorganized aspect of it too, where I didn't even get to mention this. When I was paired with the girl on Thursday, I was initially told by the guy, the one I went with on Friday, that we were going together. And then he told me that I was going with her only after we arrived at the place where he said we were going to drop her off. So basically, they pulled a bait and switch or a plot twist, a real life plot twist. And it kind of pissed me off because, you're thinking you're going one place, then you end up going somewhere else. But again, that's like a sign of their disorganized nature. And, someone could say, oh, they didn't know at the, whatever. But my point is, if we're going to put so much time into looking professional, why do we not act the part? Like, why am I working somewhere where they can tell you you're going to go to this place, and then all the way at the last minute, oh, you're actually going over here. Oh, you thought that you didn't, you were fine. Oh, you have these papers that you didn't fill out online that we didn't tell you about either. Ha! It's like you see that stuff again, along with the behavior of the employees. Like, I hate to use this term because it's usually for like other stuff, but the phrase "you can't put lipstick on a pig" is true. When you have people who, even when they're like clocked in, they like, I know I get accused of being shy. I did a whole video about it, but I really do try to at least pretend to be professional when I'm working somewhere. That's why I'm more reserved. I'm less likely to say things, whatever. And then it's only when I'm, with one person I get a little more comfortable, and that still is like toned down to a degree. But what's crazy is that they have these kids, and some of these guys are like 18, 19, 20. And really what they've been indoctrinated into is this idea that, this job will like grow with them. And, it's all just like a sad cycle. But you have these, barely legal adults who you dress them up nice, you put them in their suits and ties and all the rest of it, but they still act immature. They still act like people who are not serious. Sure, they're serious when they're scolding you about not wearing something and, giving their little advice. But in terms of how they act when they're with each other, around other employees, it's some of the most unprofessional behavior I've ever seen. It's like all this stuff about a dress code. How about we have an etiquette code? How about we have an actual code of how a business should be run? If the people are going to have to dress a certain way, have them act a certain way. If they're going to, be so rigid about what I should have to put on, how about they be rigid about how well their company works? Like it's so sad to just see how, none of this stuff matters, right? Like if this job was, a 9 to 5, you're paid by the hour, this is at a minimum $800 every week, I would have been the first one to go get a suit, right? Because the amount for 2 suits is not going to, override whatever I made from that week of just sitting out there for 50 something hours, throughout the course of those 6 days. But if this place is going to try to stave off paying me by doing the whole commission based crap, and also be willing to get rid of me anytime it wants, I'm just not willing to make that kind of investment in return, because that investment has not been made in me. So they'll keep circling the wagon. Like I said, what's funny about these companies is that they're so like desperate, like they want to cling on to standards again of like the way people should look, but they're so desperate that not only did they hire me looking the way I did, which is like already kind of funny that, oh my God, this person looks the way that we hired them last week. Who would have thought? They hired a guy with tattoos on his neck, on his arms, and it's like you don't do that unless you are very clearly at your wit's end in terms of just having people cycle through the place. So just it's sad that they're so obsessed with what people are wearing, but then when their company, when the people that work there act like children, dressed up children, and their business is so unprofessional that key aspects of even being able to perform as an employee are not talked to you by the people who are running it. It is a well dressed impending crash and burn. It is something that looks nice, right? But it's going to keep failing.